I'm Mariana Cordier. Welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. Affordable housing in Montgomery County has been an issue for years, and Montgomery Housing Partnership has been working to provide housing for over 30 years. Robert Goldman, the president of MHP, will look back at both the progress that has been made as well as the challenges of the future. The League of Women Voters will celebrate its 100th birthday in 2020 and highlights its mission of providing information and support to voters and advocating for issues after careful study. Elaine, Apter, who comments on the show about the activities of the League, joins us today. The Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office works hard to prevent crime in addition to providing prosecutions after crimes have been committed. Phil Andrews, who directs the prevention programs in the office, is here today to review these efforts. Montgomery County Public Schools is considered to have some of the best schools in the country and is an essential part of the reputation of Montgomery County as a quality place to live. Fred Evans, a frequent guest as well as a host, will talk about the schools here. Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is our last show, if you can believe it, after 32 years.
Well, it's an honor to be here. Over the years, I've been with you and Don and Ken, and it's been a real honor, and I appreciate all that Carla and Lena have done to put this on. It's been great.
They've done a fantastic job, and you've done a fantastic job coming on and telling our audience about affordable housing in this county and what's going on and what's happened in the last 25 years. So give us a review.
Yeah, well, like your show has been 30 years. MHP this year is celebrating its 30-year anniversary. So we're very excited.
Congrats.
And thank you. And as I reflect back, 30, I wasn't there 30 years ago, but as I reflect back on MHP's history and really the nonprofit community's history, we've come a long way, and it's a great sign for the future. I mean, we started by just buying individual houses, or what we call MPDUs, and went from there to buy older apartment buildings and fix them up, and now we're doing, very intricate financing, bonds and tax credits, and doing new construction, senior housing, for sale housing. So we've come a long way for not only for MHP, but for the nonprofit community as a whole.
And how is the county doing with having affordable housing available?
Yeah, we've come a long way, and we have a long ways to go. And I think it starts with attitudes. And we were, to be honest, suburbs were started on with restrictive covenants and how FHA saying no blacks can get loans from our. And that's how we start, but we've come a long way. In the 70s, the county council passed inclusionary zoning, saying every developer that builds housing has to set aside 12.5% to 15% of their units for affordable housing. And that was one of the first in the country. So Montgomery County had sort of a progressive wing there, but there's still that sort of NIMBYism as well. And we saw that recently the county council passed accessory dwelling unit, allowing basically individuals in their single-family houses to either set aside their basement, their garage, or put a unit in the back for housing.
So now people can have, I guess you would call it an in-law suite or something like that.
Absolutely, and that legislation, being at MHP for 18 years, it first was introduced to the council 18 years ago.
Wow. Such
strong opposition, and the council pulled back on it. I think about 6 or 7 years ago, they passed some legislation, but a lot of restrictions. If your neighbor had one, you couldn't have one. A lot of other kind of restrictions on it, but it was the first of it. And now, finally, council, even with continued opposition, there was now strong support. And the unanimous council said, yes, we need affordable housing, we need accessory dwelling units.
That's what I was going to say. To pass unanimously, the NIMBYism, for those that don't know, is not in my backyard. Is
yes.
that?
I'm sorry, yes. You shouldn't use it.
No, you don't have to apologize. I just, that was an ongoing part of the argument against this recent legislation. So,
and why was it the sentiment not in my backyard?
Because, he knows better than
Well, I mean, I think people, sometimes they'll say we're for affordable housing, but then when it's in their neighborhood, there's a fear of change, a fear of who's going to move in, and it was sad. Some of the comments during the accessory dwelling unit discussion were very ugly. There was an op-ed in the Washington Post that was very ugly. And,
Right.
and what was great to see, and this is really the progress in Montgomery County, is that actually people stood up and said, no, that's not who we are. We're better than this. We do need affordable housing, and we do support it. And therefore, the support, we now call them the YIMBYs, yes in my backyard, said, we need affordable housing, and we support it. And the council heard now, all of a sudden, not just hearing the no's, they started hearing the yeses, and then they gave them the support to say, yes, we can support this, and this is important for our community.
Well, the League has been a big supporter of the affordable housing, and if you really want to know what you're doing is, I would advise people to go and do their tours, because there's wonderful things going on with affordable housing and places for children in the buildings, little children, and it is just an eye awakening. So I really congratulate you for what you've done.
And I think that's part of the nonprofit mission, is that we're not just doing housing. We're making an investment in the people, with after-school programs for the kids, English classes and computer classes for adults, a wide variety of things for the people who live there. But we're also investing in the community. We recognize that affordable housing is part of a broader community, and how can we fit in and make an investment to have strong, healthy neighborhoods. And so that's been MHP's approach and mission over the 30 years, and we hope to continue to do that. I think one of our struggles as we look forward is that we're growing as a county. We're basically built out.
Right.
And so where do you put housing? Where do you put affordable housing? So people are looking at those garden-style apartments, low density, knock them down, put high-rise luxury,
Right.
and that's not going to, that housing is now affordable for folks and will be lost.
Where we're going to leave it.
Okay, yeah.
So there's
The
tons
challenge
to
is
keep
ahead.
going.
Yes.
People don't disregard affordable housing. It's still going on. It's still an important issue. And we have a lot to look forward to.
Absolutely.
So that's great. Thank you for being here.
Sure, thank you.
Elaine.
Hi there.
Welcome back.
It's great to be back, even though it is the last show.
I know. I can't believe it. And I
Right.
was going to say, Carla has not been around longer than the leader.
Isn't that amazing?
But
she
100 years.
Yes.
Wow.
Right.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And Montgomery County was one of the first local leagues to be established. We are close to 100 years old also. So it's very, very exciting.
Yeah,
it really
is
is.
amazing.
And through the years, we're really most known for probably the voter's guide and the voter information. Of course, we have come into the 21st century with Vote 411, so we are online and the voter's guide is interactive. But through the years in Montgomery County, we have really worked hard to support housing and education. The Ag Reserve has been a big, so we've been very active locally, but we're also active nationally, and things have changed. Lately, we have really surged in our membership, and that's mainly because even though we have all these other issues, the main issue for the League of Women Voters is getting voter information and getting voters out, and getting voters registered, getting them to vote and learn the issues.
And you've had an increase, you were saying earlier, an increase in men joining the league.
Yes, men and women. And one of the things that has really spurred it, some of the things are the two Supreme Court decisions, Citizens United, and then the gutting of the Voting Rights Act. And we've seen the voter suppression come along. The other one, biggie, is redistricting, and there Maryland does have a big part in redistricting.
The sixth
because
congressional district?
Yeah, we ended up signing an amicus brief for the against the redistricting of the 6th congressional district. Although to me the 3rd is much more interesting.
Right, that looks like blood spatter.
That so somebody should really look at a map. But we are still very active. This is our last chance in the next Maryland legislative session to pass independent redistricting commission if we want to get it through to the 2020
Elections.
And the census, because it has to go to the voters. It's a constitutional amendment, and we in Maryland do not have the initiative process, which the State League is going to study this year.
Okay.
That's
So it's
interesting.
The initiative, so the voters cannot put
Right.
anything on the ballot. So it is interesting. So we're behind in some of the other states.
And the states that have gotten independent commissions have done it through the initiative process.
The
'cause
initiative
legislatures
process. And
refuse to do
interesting
that.
enough, the legislation in Maryland keeps saying, well, if a Republican, state does it, we'll do it. Well, Virginia's done it, Colorado, and they're still backtracking. And the other thing that I'm really interested in watching is something that has been in the news yesterday, and that's the Mueller investigation.
Oh, what was
And
that? I'm sorry, what were
one
you
of the
watching?
things was that he definitely stated was the interference in our elections.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
And
No
as
question.
leaguers and voters, citizens, or just Americans, we need to really look at that and
figure out how to address it,
right,
how to
and
avoid it.
it's
And I
so
think it's going to be groups like yourselves and the people speaking up, because clearly the legislatures and the people who have the power to make the change aren't acting.
right, and that's what we found is that people are coming to the League of Women Voters on these issues because we probably are the main group with common cause that are working on these issues. And so I think that's where our membership has expanded, our membership has expanded, and our focus is getting a little narrower. We're also interested, and we'll keep going on all the other issues, but we really want to concentrate on the elections.
Keep supporting affordable housing, please.
We promise, and education.
Given that the League's always been nonpartisan and partisanship's
Yes.
a big problem in the
Right.
United States, has the League looked at supporting open primaries or primaries aren't closed
yes,
to
we went
just
through
party
that.
voters?
In fact,
In 30 seconds.
oh, okay. In 30 seconds, the League changed their position. State League changed their position last year from closed primaries to open primaries.
That's great.
So, yes,
Excellent.
and especially for the independent voter.
Great.
Well, I think that there's so many independent voters after all the changes we've seen from the last elections and people's opinions and feelings. That's important
Right.
issue.
There are more registered independents than Republicans in Montgomery
Yes,
County.
yes.
Right.
All right. Well, as interesting as that is, we have to take a break. We'll be right back. And we're back. Bill Andrews, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for
joining
having me
us.
on this final show.
It's an honor to have you, and particularly because of your long dedication to the county as a county council member. Now you're at the state's attorney's office. So we really appreciate you joining us in this last show.
Thank you.
And so preventing crime is tough, and the programs that the state's attorney's office has is super important. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the programs?
Sure, and just reflecting on the beginning of the show back in the mid-'80s,
Yeah.
crime was a lot higher then and increased for a while nationally and in most jurisdictions into the 90s and has been tailing off recently for a lot of reasons. But it's also given us more opportunity to focus on crime prevention, and State's Attorney John McCarthy has really focused on that with a few programs such as the Truancy Prevention Program, which is in 19 middle schools.
That's awesome.
Fred Evans is a volunteer with that program, a mentor,
I won't
and now a
take-
facilitator.
I won't take any of your time, but
Take it, take it.
it's a phenomenal program. I've been in 3 middle schools, and you can talk more about it, obviously, but it's
And what
But
is
we
the
serve
counseling
about
program?
300 students a year this way. The schools select students who are missing too much school.
Right.
They're still in school most of the time, but they're getting to a point where if they don't change, they're going to get in big trouble and likely get in trouble with the law if they're not in school, because our prisons and jails are full of people that dropped out of school. So we want to turn around that attendance problem, and we meet with the student individually, usually 10 students a semester, 10-week program to problem solve. It's a very positive-based program. We've had excellent success. 80% of the students improved their attendance.
Right.
About half improved very substantially
That's awesome.
during that period. And
And-
we've done some follow-up to see, and there's been some lasting.
When we meet with the students, we meet with them weekly. It's a team of us, about 4 or 5 of us. And we don't yell at the student. We go over what their grades are, how their attendance was, and then they have to set a goal for the next week. It doesn't have to be a long, involved goal, but what are you going to do to improve your attendance or your grades the next week? And it's positive. It's not.
And as an educator and having all the experience that you have and seeing this, when you meet with them in the beginning and then later, do you see the difference?
Oh, you can see a change, yeah. Yeah, it's not 100%, but what is?
No, right.
But the percentages, as Phil has mentioned, are great.
And focusing on the middle schools helps to have a
Yes.
benefit
Yes.
for the rest of the student's career. So in that way, we're in the high schools too.
Before they
Because
become
we're sending
teenagers,
students
right?
to high school who have gone through that program. But we have many other prevention programs too,
Like?
Choose Respect, which is a program that works with teens about healthy dating relationships and avoiding abusive relationships.
Oh, that's
Speak
super
Up, Save a
important.
Life, which is about the opioid epidemic and
Right.
crisis, and getting information out about what to do if you know someone who's addicted to opioids and what to look for. And Speak Up, Save a Life is also about the Good Samaritan Law, which in Maryland allows people to call 911 without fear of prosecution, even if they've been involved in something they shouldn't be doing, like
Right.
using drugs, illegal drugs,
So that's
to
basically
save a
for
life.
the person, if they're suffering an overdose or whatever, they
Or
can
if a friend's suffering an
immediately-
overdose, they can call. They won't get prosecuted if they've called for that reason.
What kind of publicity do you do to alert
We're
the
out speaking
citizens
to any
about-
group that will have us. We participate in many events. This is a joint project with the Bar Association, which actually launched it, and then we provide a lot of the speakers for it. So it's a partnership with the Montgomery County Bar Association.
And I think that's important because, you know, when people are talking about addiction and it has to do with drugs that are illegal, there is that hesitancy of calling and reporting. And so to have the state's attorney's office say, you can call, we're not going to prosecute, save a life.
The priority is to save lives.
impactful. Yeah.
Right. So, and that's been an important program that we've been working on. We also have a program to talk to teens, especially students mainly, about internet safety and how to avoid getting in trouble online, because so many students get in trouble from what they post, and then years later or whenever it comes
Right.
back to haunt them when they apply for college, or they try to get a job and it comes up in the interview, or they can't get a security clearance because of photographs they posted. So it's really important for young people to know they have to protect their future by being careful about what they post,
And
not hit
that's
that
so
send
hard
button
for
without
someone
thinking.
who's young, who doesn't really consider anything long term, right?
Right.
That's right. And
Yeah.
then one other program I wanted to mention was the mental health court, which State Attorney McCarthy helped champion. It's in our circuit and district courts. It actually will be in place in the session this afternoon in the district court every Thursday. And so it's a program that diverts people who commit low-level crimes due to a mental illness that's at least a contributing factor, diverts them from prosecution and jail into treatment, with the idea of getting them back on their feet and avoiding recidivism. And the studies around the country show that it
That's awesome.
helps.
That sounds like a lot of work. And I congratulate you guys and John McCarthy for doing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fred Evans, this is our last time.
Last but not least, right?
Our last tango. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
How are
I'm
the
doing-
schools doing?
I'm a retiree. I wouldn't know how the school. No, I'm just kidding. I think our school system is doing well. It's vital. It's thriving. Are there issues? Absolutely. There have been issues since I came here 50 years ago.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Was that 100 years ago?
Almost 50 years
The
ago.
leader one voter.
And just to give a perspective, first of all, I'm happy to be here, but I'm also sad that this is going to be our last program. I was, as was mentioned, I've been very involved as a guest and sometimes as a host, and I think it's an important. It's been an important part of this community.
Absolutely,
so thank you
yeah.
for having me. I came here, and a lot of people have heard this story. I'm sure my daughters are rolling their eyes, but that's all right. In 1970, and went to Wooten High School as a teacher, and Wooten High School and Magruder High School opened that year. The county was growing. At that time, we had roughly 100,000 students in the entire school system. The demographic makeup was a little different than it is now. 91% of the students who were attending then were Caucasian. About 6%, 5%, excuse me, were African American. Very small percentage, 2 or 3% of Hispanic and Asian students at
Boy,
that time.
have things changed.
So when I, quote, retired, my first retirement, in 2000, after being principal at Gaithersburg High School for 7 years, that was the last class, the class of 2000 countywide was the last class that was majority Caucasian. Since that time, we have become I don't like this term necessarily, but a majority-minority school system.
I would just say diverse.
Yeah, diverse, very diverse.
Have you seen a change in the curriculum? Because at one point we dropped, especially in high school, some of the hands-on, the mechanical things, and it was all college. Now they're trying to go back a little bit. Where do you see that?
I think that has evolved depending on a whole variety of things which we don't have enough time to go over. But I think that now we have a broader perspective of training people in skill. The great example is the Edison Center,
Yes.
which trains kids in a variety of fields: auto body, auto technology, cosmetology. At Gaithersburg, I had cosmetology, auto body, and auto technology as part of the school program, and kids from the northern part of the county could come there.
That's
and
great.
the kids, you don't say you must go to that program, but it's a choice. It's an option for someone to use. So we need to do more of that. I had some of my cosmetology students, and they opened up their own shops or their own.
Yeah, they're the small businesses.
They
come out with a
That's
license,
the way-
right,
right.
to practice,
That's
right?
right. That's right. Or they're on an avenue to once
Okay.
they work for a large, a auto company, they can get their license through their work with them. So it's
Okay.
been excellent. It's been excellent.
Going back to your demographics, I mean, it seems like given the change in demographics, there's now that sort of push to reconsider boundary changes, and wondering,
Ooh.
and that seems, when I think about the housing fights, it seems
I'm
like
sorry,
the
we need an
boundary
hour-long
change-
show to just
1
start that.
hour? I think you're underestimating.
Let me give you a perspective on that. That has always been an issue, and it comes up in a variety of different times. I could reflect with you back in the 1970s when an elementary school was switched from one high school feeder to another high school feeder, and the school board meetings, you would have been shocked at the reaction. And it is something that will always be there, And how do we make a diverse county? How do we make some of our schools more diverse? Right. And one way to do that is boundary change, and that becomes controversial because not I, but someone moved into a neighborhood because of the school, and now they find out their child's going to be in another school. So it's a very emotional. I have no answer for it, but it needs to be looked at. It needs to be examined. Absolutely. I found it to be exciting to be in a school that was as diverse as when I was principal at Gaithersburg. It was rich for everyone, seriously, and it proved to be very, very positive.
So in about the last 30 seconds or so, what are your final words on the last show?
My final words is for parents, community to get involved in their schools and get to know their principals, their teachers, and don't just sit back and watch, but get involved with your children. And if you don't have children, with the community, volunteer. That's like truancy prevention.
Like you're doing.
It's very important, because that's the richness of let's not underestimate the richness of our schools in this county.
And our kids are our future.
That's
so
right.
I'd like to thank all of you for joining me in this last show, and all of you in the audience for joining us this week for this edition of Montgomery Weekend Review. I'm Mariana Cordier. Please, you won't join us next time, but please follow us on YouTube for the past shows. Thank you.